All right, I think we got it. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's a month of service presentation of foreclosure. We're talking about property tax collections and foreclosures. My name is Nia Murray. I'm the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the a month service collaboration. Also included is the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us on behalf of our presenting partner with Lone Star Legal Aid, we have Mr. Amir Bafui, as well as Ms. Samantha Guzman, who's going to be presenting the information to you today about property tax foreclosure. And also included in the partnership, we have the Harris Central Appraisal District, the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, the Texas Legal Services Center, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, and the Earl Carl Institute. And together we make up a month of service. And basically what a month of service is the collaboration of all of our organizations coming together on a monthly basis and offering a variety of different workshops, resources, and information to the community relative to asset protection, asset building, community empowerment, and the maintaining of generational wealth. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there that do not have access to a lot of information, don't know where to go for free or low cost resources that are available to them that could potentially prevent them from going into foreclosure and what their rights are and what those processes look like. So we're here to provide that information for you today. The third Thursday, the fourth Thursday of each month is our foreclosure prevention series. And we do those on a rotating basis. So today is the property tax collections. Next month will be the the mortgage foreclosure, and then the following month will be the HOA foreclosures, and then we put those on repeat for the remainder of the year. So if there's information that you need in regards to other types of foreclosure, then you definitely want to make sure that you tune in the fourth Thursday of each month to make sure that you get that information, or at least get some information for somebody else that may find this information to be beneficial as well. So this is your opportunity that if you do have questions, you can ask the legal service professionals that are available to you. Since this is their area of expertise, so we rely on them for the most up-to-date information. You can ask them the questions that is that you may have. We do ask that you try to keep your questions to be general in nature so that you don't divulge any personal detailed information that could get out there, as we do record the session and we do broadcast live on our social media platforms on YouTube and on Facebook. So we want to try to protect that privacy as much as we possibly can. So in addition to that, information that does get presented here today is for informational purposes only. It is not to be considered legal advice. However, we do definitely encourage you to reach out to our legal service partners like Lone Star Legal Aid if you do find yourself in need of any civil legal assistance like foreclosure prevention. And they'll go into a little bit more detail about other services that are available with Lone Star Legal Aid as well. Um, Again, reach out if you guys do find yourselves in need. Do not automatically assume or discount yourself that you don't qualify for services or things like that. That there are opportunities, there are services, there are resources that are out there that are available that can help. So make sure you communicate and actually reach out. So with that being said, we're going to move right on into the introduction and into our presentation. If you do have questions, feel free to type your question into the chat box. You can unmute yourself and speak directly to the presenters at the end of the presentation, or if you're joining us on social media platforms, feel free to type into the comment section, and I will make sure that those questions are read aloud for you at the end as well. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Miss Samantha and Amir, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourselves and get started?
I'll go first. So my name is Samantha Guzman. I am a paralegal with the Foreclosure Prevention Project Unit, and I've been with Lone Star Legal Aid for almost 9 years this June.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon. My name's Amir Bafrui. I'm a supervising attorney with Lone Star Legal Aid. I've worked with legal aid since I became a lawyer in 2012. And just like Sam, I work solely in the Foreclosure Prevention Project. So both Sam and I provide legal resources to homeowners who have any sort of legal issue related to their home. We hope you are excited to hear about property tax collection and foreclosure because we have a lot of information to share with y'all.
Okay, we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so again, we're property tax collections and foreclosure prevention is the topic of our discussion today. Just as a reminder, today's presentation is just legal information only. It's not legal advice. We are not your lawyers. We are not advising you regarding your personal property tax or home ownership situation, and you should contact your financial or tax advisor or your lawyer for advice regarding your personal information. Again, this is for legal information only. Our agenda today, we're gonna give you a brief discussion, just brief information about Lone Star Legal Aid, and then we'll talk about property tax basics and the introduction to property taxes. Then we'll move along to preventing property tax foreclosures, including strategies to make property taxes more affordable for you by protesting your property value, applying for your homestead exemptions and protesting denials, as well as payment plans. And we'll give you some information about tax deferrals, which is a great tool to help lower your property taxes as well, keep your funds manageable. Then we'll move on to property tax lawsuits and foreclosures and those processes and what you can do to help yourself prevent them or navigate through the process. Then we'll close it out with the homeowner's rights after your tax foreclosure sale is done with. So here at Lone Star Legal Aid, our mission is to protect and advance the civil legal rights of the millions of Texans living in poverty. We serve 76 counties by providing free advocacy, legal representation, and community education that ensures equal access to justice for everyone. Some fast facts about Lone Star Legal Aid. As I mentioned, we do service 76 counties, Harris County, as well as 72 other counties in the eastern and Gulf Coast regions of Texas, so along the Gulf Coast. And then we have 4 counties we service in Southwest Arkansas. I don't know why the other day I was thinking 2, but it is actually 4 counties in Southwest Arkansas. We have 14 offices, but I'll get into that a little bit in a couple more slides, not right now. And based on our most recent census data in our service area, there are approximately 1.9 million people at 125% of our federal poverty guidelines who are eligible for our services. So when you hear the 125%, we do have income requirements here that will make you eligible for our services here at Lone Star Legal Aid. So we do have an application process, and I'll tell you more about that in a few more slides. And I know the next part says that in 2023, we completed over 23,673 cases, impacting approximately 60,000 individuals. 33% of those were survivors of domestic violence, 7.5% were veterans, and 18.5% of those were residents 60 or older. We don't have our 2024 numbers yet because we're still closing out our last year's cases. So we hope to get updated by our next property tax presentation in a couple of more months. A little history about Lone Star Legal Aid. So in the 1960s, the Houston Legal Foundation offered criminal defense for a period of time in response to the Supreme Court decision in Gideon v. Wainwright. In Houston Legal Foundation eventually became known as the Gulf Coast Foundation. In the 1980s, the East Texas Legal Services created the East Texas Fair Housing Center, which investigated, addressed, and monitored corrective actions related to violations of the Fair Housing Act. But in 2002, the East Texas Legal Services, which was a largely rural legal aid program, and a primarily urban Gulf Coast Legal Foundation with Lone Star, with the portion of Legal Aid of Central Texas were combined to become Lone Star Legal Aid as you know us today. Here at Lone Star Legal Aid, we are the 3rd largest legal organization of its type in the United States. Lone Star Legal Aid has a proud tradition of successful client-centered work, and historically, the firm has won victories that affect not only the client who initially presented a particular issue, but groups of low-income people on community, state, and national levels. Our firm's actions have resulted in systemic policy and procedural changes like public housing desegregation and healthcare access for children. So you might ask yourself, who do we help here at Lone Star Legal Aid? Well, we help children, veterans, seniors, those of the LGBTQIA plus community, people with disabilities, and those who are homeless. Majority of our clients are women, most of whom are mothers, and a lot of our clients face isolation due to limited literacy, living in rural and remote locations, and language barriers. However, here at Lone Star Legal Aid, we do have access to interpreters, so we're able to, because more than 1.5 million people in our service region speak a language other than English. So you might not think we'll be able to help you because you don't speak English, but we do have tools that will help us communicate with you efficiently. Next, in Texas, for every 300 people, there is one attorney for roughly every 300 and every people in our general population area. However, there is only one legal aid attorney for approximately every 17,000 people in our service area with income at or below 125% of the federal poverty limit. Also, limited access to modern mass communication, such as media, such as telephones, computers, and cable television, is common among our client community. And there is little or no public transportation, most of the rural areas we serve. So just remember, not everybody has access to social media. A lot of people don't have smartphones or computers, or, they just are not comfortable using them. So we come out to your rural areas and we provide educational resources. Plus all of our rural offices are there to help you with your legal needs as well. Again, our mission at Lone Star Legal Aid is to protect and advance the civil legal rights of the millions of Texans living in poverty by providing free advocacy, legal representation, and community education that ensures equal access to justice. So don't forget. Again, you're eligible if you live within the 76 counties we serve. We only work on civil cases. We do not handle criminal cases. We do not handle cases that offer settlements, and we only help those who are low income. So again, we do have income eligibility requirements for our services. Some substantive law types that we work with are consumer law, employment law, family law, healthcare, housing, juvenile issues, neighborhood problems, public education, and financial assistance and public benefits. Now back to neighborhood problems. Remember when I said that sometimes we not only help the person who initially brought the legal issue to us, but in turn help their communities at local, state, and national levels. That's what we mean. And then our public education, we educate you just like we are today to get you to learn about the legal issues you may have. And today it just happens to be property tax foreclosures. Some special projects that we do work in, we do have a civil matters and community criminal justice project, community advocacy, consumer law again. We have a crime victims unit, a disaster relief unit. I know we all went through Hurricane Beryl last year. We have employment law, environmental justice. We have a low income taxpayer unit, a medical legal partnership unit, which often you can often find them at some of our UT clinics in the city, in Houston at least. We have a legal assistance to survivors of sexual assaults project, an eviction right to counsel. I know we all remember during the beginning stages of COVID when everybody, was out of work. That eviction right to counsel unit took off and help keep a lot of people in their rental homes. We have a fair housing unit, a military and veterans unit, and our foreclosure prevention project, which is us, as well as the Justice for Older Adults project. So how do you ask for help? Well, if you have access to the internet and a smartphone or tablet or laptop or computer, you can apply 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by visiting www.lonestarlegal.org. But if you don't have access to the internet, you can give us a call at 1-800-733-8394, Monday through Friday during regular working business hours. If we do not answer, leave a message, and someone from our central intake unit will give you a call back to help you process your application. And remember, we have tools that ensure we'll be able to communicate correctly if you don't speak English, but you probably wouldn't understand me anyways. So back to our branch offices, which I mentioned a couple of slides ago. We have offices in Beaumont, Belton, Bryan, Clute, Conroe, Galveston, Houston, which is located at 1415 Bannon off of the corners of Bell and Bannon. Bell and Bannon, Longview, Nacogdoches, Tyler, Paris, Richmond, Texarkana, and Waco. You can follow us on social media. Our Instagram handle is at Lone Star Legal Aid. Our Facebook handle is at Lone Star Legal Aid. And our YouTube handle is at L Star Legal. And I do recommend that you peruse our YouTube channel, as we have some very good legal information that might benefit you depending on your legal issue. I guess I'm going to hand it over to Amir. Now, do you want me to control the slides, or you want me to hand that over to you?
I'll share my screen, so I'll take control.
Okay.
All right, so just to make sure we're all on the same page, and thank you, Samantha, for the introduction to this topic and to letting people know what Lone Star Legal Aid is, the fact that we've been around for 75 plus years, and that we really exist to help people with a wide variety of their civil legal issues. Before I jump in any deeper, I wanted to just make sure we're able to see the agenda slide on y'all's screen. Can I get a thumbs up? All right, excellent.
Yeah.
So thank you, Nia. As I mentioned before, my name's Amir Bafroui. I'm an attorney here with Lone Star Legal Aid, and I've focused solely on helping homeowners with their legal issues since 2015. The legal information Samantha and I are going to share with you today is focused on property tax collection and property tax foreclosure. Foreclosure is an extreme form of collection. It's often referred to as an extraordinary form of collection. So you might know about bill collectors, debt collectors, what have you. They call you, they harass you, they send you letters. Foreclosure is they send you a couple of letters and they sell your house. So we're going to talk about a lot of information today. Let's go ahead and get started. So you heard me just say property tax foreclosure. What you're not going to hear me say for the next 30 or so minutes is property tax foreclosure. And the reason is it's important to understand the property tax collection and property tax assessment system that we have in Texas. Now, Samantha and I are here speaking to y'all on Zoom. If you're listening to this on recording, on YouTube, Facebook, what have you, we're in Harris County in the city of Houston. But the legal information we're sharing with you is applicable across all of Texas. There are 254 counties in Texas. They all have to follow Texas law when it comes to property tax collection. The legal information we're sharing with you today from Houston applies in all 254 of those counties. So let's talk about property tax basics. Property taxes are local taxes. The state of Texas does not have an income tax. The way that a lot of local governments, so think city, county, school district, fund their operations, I mean, keep the lights on, keep the teachers paid, pay for the firefighters, keep the roads good, in good condition, is through property taxes. Local officials set those taxes, local officials collect those taxes. Texas law, which is statewide, not county specific or city specific, talks about how this process works. This is to emphasize the point I just made, which is the same process plays out no matter what county you're in. The evaluation process, which is kind of the first step in dictating or figuring out what your property tax bill is done by each county. So each of those 254 Texas counties has what's called a central appraisal district. Sometimes it's called a county appraisal district, but if you hear me use the term CAD, C-A-D, we're talking about the exact same thing. So under the Texas Constitution, which is the set of rules that everybody has to follow, taxation must be equal and uniform. That means if two houses are the exact same and they're sitting right next to each other, they have to be taxed and appraised the same way. Tangible property, meaning stuff. So think like businesses that use machinery, semi-trucks, those kind of things, have to be taxed on their market value on January 1st. Same with real estate. So land, dirt, houses, that has to be taxed as its market value as of January 1st of every year. This will be important when we start talking about the appraisal process. All property is taxable unless there's an exemption for it. And these exemptions can be from federal law, which is from Washington, D.C. and our members of Congress, or from state law, which is set by our representatives and senators and the governor in Austin. Property owners have a right to reasonable notice of any increase in the appraised value of their property. What does that mean? We're going to take a deeper dive, but it basically means the CAD, or the Central Appraisal District, says, we think your house is now worth this number. Well, we not think your business property, your semi-trucks, machinery, what have you, is now worth this number. And that's going to kind of dictate what your property tax bill will end up being. And each property in an appraisal district must have one appraised value. There can't be multiple values for the same piece of property. So how does the system work? At the beginning of the process is the appraisal district. We're going to talk about the appraisal district process today very lightly, probably 10 to 15 minutes. If you would like to know a deeper dive on how property tax appraisals work and how they impact you and your home and your family, I highly recommend checking out A Month of Services YouTube channel. They do a monthly presentation with the the Harris Central Appraisal District staff. So the people who go through this process every year, and they do a great presentation on this topic. It's a much deeper dive than we're going to cover today. So the first step is the appraisal districts. As part of that process, there's an appraisal review board, or ARB, and then there's the local taxing unit. So when you hear me use that term, don't let your eyes glaze over. I'm talking about the city, the county, the school district. There's sometimes other taxing units, depending on what part of town you live in. You might have a MUD, or a municipal utility district. If you live on the southwest side of Houston, like near Richmond, where there's levees that keep the Brazos River out, you might have a levee improvement district, or a LID. These are really unique to the suburbs or areas that aren't in the city limits. You're not in the city limits of the city of Houston or the city of Richmond. But really the big three are the city, the county, and the school districts. So the appraisal district for each county sets the value of the taxable property every year. So just because you got a value set by your county, your central appraisal district last year, they're going to contact you sometime in the next month or so. Generally, it's in the spring, to let you know what they think your value is this year. And the reason is because Texas law requires them to update the values as of January 1 of every year. So you're going to get an annual notice from your central appraisal district. The appraisal review board, that second part in the process that we just went over, is they settle any disagreements between you and the appraisal district. And we're going to spend a little time on this, but just very, very briefly, if you get that notice from the central appraisal district, the CAD, and they say, hey, we think your house is worth $1 million. And you say, no, I definitely paid $200,000 for it last year. You can file some paperwork. It's called a protest. And the protest is basically saying, this is my position. This is the CAD's position. That decision, how to resolve that, is settled by the appraisal review board, or the ARB. And the local taxing units come in at the end of this process, once the value of your home or property has been set, and they set the tax rate. Now, what does that mean? Well, they figure out how much money they need in their budget to pay the teachers, the firefighters, the police officers, and maintain the roads and other necessary government functions. And they're going to figure out what tax rate they need to charge against your appraised value, against all appraised value in their area, to raise that money. Let me briefly give you an example. Your house is worth $200,000, and the city, the county, and the school district collectively, they charge a tax rate of 2%. That means 2% times $200,000 is going to create a $4,000 property tax bill. Now, that is very simple. We're going to go through some exceptions and exemptions that can lower that bill, but that's generally how the process works. So let's talk about the path of the property tax dollar. You pay your property taxes to the local tax collector. In Harris County, we have the Harris County Tax Office. But in some parts of the county, you might live in a school district that has its own tax office. Like if you live in Alief or in Aldine or in Spring Branch or in Spring or in Cypress. Those offices often have their own tax office. So you might get 2 tax bills. It's not a scam. I encourage you to look into information on that, but generally that's generally not a scam. Once the tax collector collects the money, they distribute it to the schools, the cities, other members of the local government so that they can spend the funds on roads, schools, hospitals, and what have you. So the 4 stages of the taxation process, we've already touched on one, is valuing the taxable property. And if you disagree with the value of the taxable property, you go to step 2, which is protesting, saying, I don't think the number is correct. I think my house is worth less. Once the value is set after the end of the protesting process, then the local governments set their tax rates. And once the tax rate is set, they can send you the tax bill as part of the collection process. January 1st, I want you guys to think about property taxes as a year-round thing. January 1st is the beginning of the appraisal process. What the property is used for on January 1st and the market conditions help determine what the central appraisal district, what value the central appraisal district is going to set. And they use a mass appraisal process. So those of you who may have recently bought a house may have had, as part of that process, an appraiser come to your house and they walk around the inside, they measure the outside, they look at the condition, they check out the roof, and they give you an appraisal. And they say, we think your house is worth this much money. It's very individualized to your building, your house, your home. That is not what central appraisal districts do. I'm going to be off on the numbers, but in Harris County, where the city of Houston is located, there's over 7 million different pieces of property, parcels of land, lots, buildings, what have you. The staff at HCAD, the Harris Central Appraisal District, does not go into each and every single one of those buildings. I don't know of any CAD that does. So they use a mass appraisal process. Different CADs do different things. I'm not the one who's qualified to talk about that process, but just understand that the appraisal process is not individualized. So if there's something wrong with your home or something different about your home, I highly encourage you to think about protesting or disagreeing with the CAD on the value they set. So between January 1 and April 30th, so again, winter is ending, spring is starting in Texas, the appraisal district begins the process for people to apply for tax exemptions. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. What I really want you to focus on at this point in the presentation is the appraisal district sending out the notices of the appraised value. So this is where they're going to say, hey, we think your house is worth $200,000 or $300,000. And if you're okay with that number, there's nothing more for you to do. If you disagree with that number, you want to go through the protesting process, we have to talk about a few deadlines. So you have the right to protest. Your deadline is generally May 15th. Now, if the appraisal district mails you the notice on April 30th, Texas law actually gives you 30 days to file your protest. So your deadline doesn't become May 15th, it becomes May 30th. It's to give everybody at least 30 days. Now, if you got your appraisal notice on April 1st, your deadline is May 15th. You've now got 45 days. But again, the bare minimum is 30 days. And when you file your protest, ultimately your dispute between your number and the CAD's number is going to be resolved by the appraisal review board. This is an independent panel of citizens responsible for the hearing process. They're going to consider your evidence, what proof you have that you think your house is not worth whatever number the CAD came up with, and the CAD's going to have its opportunity to present its evidence. Some examples of evidence could be if your home needs, a foundation replaced. The appraisal district didn't come into your house. They don't see, the door frames cracking, the doors that won't shut, the crack in the floor, or maybe the roof needs to be replaced. If you get some estimates from contractors for how much those things are going to cost, I highly recommend every single person use that kind of information to say, no, this needs to be individualized for my home. Here's the proof. Here's the thing. Here's the information that we should lower the appraised value, because that'll have a direct impact on lowering your property tax bill. So after the appraisal process and the protest process is resolved, and that's generally, again, the appraisals are sent out in the winter and spring. The protesting starts in late spring, early summer, and is resolved generally in July. In September, August, September, and October, that's when different members of local government, so again, school districts, county, city, they meet, they set their tax, they figure out what their budget is, and they set their tax rate. And once the tax rate is set, then the tax bill is sent out. And this is generally, the tax bill is mailed out to every homeowner in October or November. A big exception is if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I just heard what you said, but I ain't got a tax bill in 3 or 4 years. I'm raising my hand to let you guys know I have not gotten a tax bill in 3 or 4 years. It doesn't mean I know some super secret lawyer way of avoiding taxes. I don't. It's because I have a mortgage on my property. If you have a mortgage on your property, 9 times out of 10, your tax bill got mailed to your mortgage company because part of your mortgage payment is to pay your taxes. So your mortgage company needs to know what the bill is every year. That's what's happened to me. More often than not, that's what happens. That's what happens to you if you have a mortgage on your property. And when I say mortgage, I'm talking about regular mortgages, home equity loans, or reverse mortgages. All of those situations, your property tax bill, more often than not, will be mailed to the company. Now, the bill is mailed out in October and November. You have, under Texas law, until January 31st of the following year to pay your taxes. What does that mean? Let's dial it back. 2024 ended 2 months ago. The 2024 tax bill was due by January 31st, 2025. So starting in January, going through the appraisal process, actually, let me just jump to the next slide because that's a visual of what I'm about to do. Starting in January, that's when the appraisal process starts. And then you go through the protesting process in the summer. And then the taxing units in August and September, when it's real hot, that's when they start setting their property tax rates. And the bill gets mailed out in October. And then you have 1 month into the next year to pay your property tax bill. If you miss the deadline to pay your property tax bill by 1 day, you immediately get hit with pretty hefty penalties. Highly recommend, budgets are tight, property tax bills are high, but I highly recommend you beg and borrow, work with friends and family members to find a way to pay the property tax bill because you don't want to have to pay a penalty. It doesn't mean you're going to lose your home on February 1st, but the bill, which can often be thousands of dollars, gets an immediate 6% penalty. And these things can add up because interest starts getting added. The penalties get higher every month you go along. So how is my tax amount calculated? I've teased this a few times. I have a bad habit of jumping ahead of myself in the slides, but I'm going to dial it back right here. We're going to do a little bit deeper dive on calculating property taxes. The amount of tax you pay is based on the appraised value. So, that's the first 5 months of the year. CAD says my house is worth a number. I protest. We eventually, figure out the number. Now the appraised value is set. Then you lower the taxable value in that second bullet point by the amount of tax exemptions. You might know this is the homestead exemption. For those of you who may be disabled and unable to work, you're qualified for another exemption. It's called the disabled person exemption. If you're a veteran, you may qualify for a veteran who may be disabled from your active duty service. If you're over 65, there's an exemption for that as well. You take all of those exemptions. There's more exemptions beyond that, but I won't go through all of them. You take all of those exemptions, and that sets the final taxable amount. Here's an example. If you look on this slide, you'll see where in the red circle, there's a market value. So HCAD, in this case, the Harris Central Appraisal District has said, we think your house is worth $350,000. But the appraised value gets set lower, maybe through protesting, maybe the house needs a new roof. So that's why it's, $32,000 lower. And then if you look at the second part, the middle part of the slide, you see that Houston ISD actually offers this person a $164,677 exemption. What that does is you take the 323, subtract 164, and that gets you to about $180,000 that is actually taxed. Or sorry, $158,000 that's actually taxed. You take that taxable value, multiply it times the tax rate, and I'm looking at the bottom part of the slide now, and then you get your actual property tax bill. I know no one warned y'all we're going to do math today, but I promise this thing's recorded. You can pause it and stare at this slide till it makes sense. This is the property tax process in Texas. Here's some more math for you. If you're less a visual person and more like, give me the words so I can see the math, how to calculate your property taxes, the appraised value minus the exemption amount gets you the taxable value. The taxable value multiplied times the tax rate. So you're going to move the tax rate, it's going to be a percentage. In the state of Texas, the average tax rate is about 2.2%. So when you're going to try to figure that out and multiply it, like 2.2, take the decimal, move it 2 points to the in front of the first two, and that will give you 0.022 to figure out what your tax amount is. And here's some more math building off of what we just did on the slide. The $323,000 appraised value, you subtract the $164,000 exemption, the taxable value set at $158,000. Take the $158,000 taxable value, you multiply it times the tax rate, which has been turned into a decimal, which is for HISD in 2023 was 0.008683. And that gives you a tax bill of $1,378.06. The taxes would have been twice as much without the homestead exemption. That just shows you the power of the exemption. Now, I want to give you guys an update. This is something that happened at the end of 2023, but it bears repeating because people need to know about it. Homestead exemptions for school districts in Texas until 2023 were $40,000. That amount was raised, the floor on that was raised to at least $100,000. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, Amir, on that slide that you just finished, I saw HISD offered that homeowner $164,000, and you're absolutely right. School districts, counties, cities, any taxing unit can be more generous than what Texas law requires. But at the end of 2023, Texas legislator raised the floor on homestead exemptions from $40,000 to $100,000. So the minimum for your school district homestead exemption is always going to be $100,000. Now there's discussion of raising it again now that we're in the 2025 legislative session. We probably won't have any finality on that until later this year because I believe it'll require another constitutional amendment, but stay tuned. Additionally, prior to 2021, a homeowner who maybe bought their home in the middle of the year, maybe you bought it in April, like I bought my house, wouldn't be able to get a homestead exemption at all until you were the owner as of January 1st. So you might have 1 year where you're paying taxes that there is no exemption to lower your tax bill. The legislature changed the law to allow people to get prorated homestead exemptions. Basically, the day you buy the house is the day you're eligible for the homestead exemption if you live in the house. If it's a rental property or something else, there's generally not an exemption available for you. Additionally, another change from 2023, and I apologize for jumping around here, is non-homestead property. So second homes, business property, the appraisals on those cannot increase more than 20% in appraised value for the next 3 years. So that was 2023, 2024, and 2025, all the way through the end of the 2025 tax year. To be determined if it gets extended, but this is for properties valued at $5 million or less. If you have a home, if this is your home, and I think that's the majority of the people I'm speaking with, either on recording or live, the homestead exemption already limits the increases that an appraisal district can do at 10%. So let me just break it down for you real quick. If your house is worth $200,000 and you have a homestead exemption on it, before we do any math on what your tax bill is, I can tell you that next year, when the appraisal district says, hey, we think your house is worth X, Y, and Z, it's cannot be greater than 200,000 plus 10%. So basically 220,000. Now that 10% can build, right? Then we're at 220, you add another 10%, that's 22,000 and so on and so forth. But if you ever see an appraisal district who values your house at more than 10%, that's a really easy thing to attack. I've maybe seen it a handful of times in 13 years of being a lawyer, but mistakes do happen. No one's perfect. Just understand that Texas law provides this 10% cap for the homestead property, as long as you have a homestead exemption. So let's talk about how you can lower your property taxes. We've discussed briefly protesting the appraised value of your home, and we're also touched on applying for tax exemptions. Protesting always makes sense. I encourage every single person to protest their property tax value. It is literally a heads I win, tails you lose situation. If you protest and you lose, you don't get charged more in property taxes. If you protest and you lower your appraised value, guess what? Your property tax bill is lower. You do not get charged any money to do this. In fact, it's built into Texas law. So this slide talks about some information we've already shared, so I'm not going to repeat it for y'all. If you think the value is too high, remember May 15th is your deadline, or 30 days from the date the notice is delivered, whichever date is later. Now, many CADs, well, all CADs will send you a notice via mail. Many CADs will give you the ability to protest online, like what's highlighted here. This is from the Harris Central Appraisal District. If you're comfortable using things online, by all means, I encourage it. It's going to be faster. If you prefer to do things in person or via mail, those options exist in every single county appraisal district as well. Now, you can represent yourself in a protest hearing. I did it the first 2 years I was a homeowner. And then after that, I realized I wasn't very good at it and hired a property tax agent to do it. Now, you can just have your brother or sister or dad do it, or you can hire a property tax consultant to do that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you can basically have help. You don't have to do it on your own. After you file your protest, what will happen is the ARB, the Appraisal Review Board, will give you written notice of the day, time, place, and topic for a formal hearing on resolving your protest. More often than not, this is done in person, but there's an ability to request a virtual hearing. Basically, you do them on Zoom, like we're doing right now. You can also, some counties, some central appraisal districts will give you an informal conference with the appraisal district where you can work it out over the phone, work it out over Zoom, or go to the appraisal district's office, sit next to appraisal district staff. There is no ARB staff there. You're literally sitting at their desk, figuring out a number. Might take 10 to 15 minutes. It might achieve your goals. If not, you still have the ability to go to the formal appraisal review board hearing. So what should you expect at an ARB protest hearing? At the formal hearing, a panel of members from the ARB, so again, those independent citizens, they're not staff that are hired by the appraisal district, the central appraisal district, will listen to your evidence, and they'll listen to evidence from the CAD staff. The way it looks is you're generally in a conference room. On one side, with a bunch of computers, is the appraisal district staff. At the end of the table are generally three appraisal district, ARB members. They'll have little name tags if you're in Harris County. And on the other side is you. It can seem like a very informal setting. It's very like informal court. Think about it like that. There's two sides and eventually a tribunal. Those three members of those three citizens, they're going to make the final decision. Those decisions are only binding for that tax year. So you can protest every year. What I do in 2025 is not binding on 2026 and so on and so forth. What should you expect at an appraisal ARB protest hearing? Bring information to back up what you're saying. If you remember nothing else from this slide, it's prove it. If the CAD says your house is worth $200,000, I suggest you say prove it. See what evidence they have. If you say your house is worth $150,000, I suggest you prove it. Your word is some evidence. You live there, you know it. You can talk about the condition, but it's even stronger when you have outside support. Again, think of contractors who maybe give you a free estimate. They put it in writing. You go to a foundation company, a roofing company, maybe a company that replaces windows, get quotes. They're going to give you a number and you can say, look, deduct these from the appraised value because I have not replaced the windows and they need to be replaced. Or the roof is 15 years old and it needs to be replaced. These are the kind of things you should be thinking about. You could be much more creative, but those are the big three, right? Windows, windows, roofs, and foundation. If there's issues with the electrical system or the plumbing, those are other major systems in the home that are not visible, but you can get quotes on how to replace those or upgrade those, which can be used again to help you protest your appraised value. Now, this slide talks a little bit more in detail about what to expect at the ARB hearing. Again, there will be three members from the appraisal review board, and then the chief appraiser's representative. It's not going to be the chief appraiser more often than not. You can ask for only one ARB member. It's pros and cons to it. There's no harm with just having one, but there's somewhat of wisdom in crowds when you have multiple. If you're going to do this in person, everything I just described applies. If you're going to do this online, the same situation applies, just you'll be on your computer at home. You'll still need to have the proof. You'll still want to work through this. You'll still want to make sure you have a link and know how to access the online video platform. Generally, this is done in about 15 minutes. Now, you might wait for an hour or two. That's been my experience in Harris County. But when it's your turn, you're going to have about 15 minutes to argue your side of why the value should be lower. Now, you've done the first step in the protesting process. The CAD said this, said a number, you disagreed. The ARB said this is the final number. It's $200,000. If you still disagree, you actually still have options. You can go to the next level of appealing the appraisal review board's decision. There's two ways to do that. One is to sue the county appraisal district in state district court. You want to have a lawyer when it's not necessary, but you want to have a lawyer in order to be successful. When you think about going into the judicial system, the justice system, think about it like going to a foreign country, right? The courtroom, the courthouse is a foreign country. They speak a different language there. It's called legalese. Not Spanish, it's not English, it's legalese. If you don't understand legalese, you're going to have a hard time navigating that process. Now, you might say to yourself, well, Amir, you're a lawyer, you're biased. Absolutely right, I am. But if you go to a foreign country, you want to have a guide. And that's what a lawyer is, to help you be more successful, to get to the places you want to go. So if you're considering option one, highly, highly, highly recommend you work with an attorney. You can also, instead of filing a lawsuit, you can ask for binding arbitration, which is done with the State Office of, oh gosh, I just lost the acronym, but it's State Office of Hearings and Arbitration, I believe. It's SOHA. I might have gotten the acronyms out of order. But this is done by mail. You're not actually going to go to see an arbitrator. The county appraisal district will send in their documents. You'll send in your documents. Some people work with lawyers. Some people do it themselves. Other people work with private property tax consultants. These are business people who can help you lower your property taxes. It's another option. It costs $500 to do it. If you win, you get your money back. You get $450 of the money back. If you lose, the state, the state keeps the money because they had to spend it on the arbitrator. Things to think about if you disagree after what happened with the ARB hearing.
Real quick, it's the State Office of Administrative Hearings.
There you go. SOAH. Thank you so much, Samantha. So what happens if you miss your protest deadline? You better have a good reason. Your car broke down. There was an accident. The office for Harris Central Appraisal District is off of Highway 290 here in Houston. 290 was shut down. Provide proof. Generally, the appraisal district will work with you. They don't have to. The requirement under Texas law is you have to have good cause to protest if you miss your deadline. The deadline I'm talking about is May 15th. If you miss your hearing date, traffic, car broke down, that's going to be a lot easier to argue. If you miss your deadline to protest, you're going to have really, really good cause. Good cause is kind of a broad term. I can't give you like, hey, this is it, do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to win. These are just things to think about. Meet that May 15th deadline because it's going to be very hard to, move past it if you miss it. So we've talked about the protesting process, the pros and cons of it. Pros do it, cons is very little. And the ability to protest even beyond the ARB process. Let's talk about homestead exemptions. What are they and how do they affect your property taxes? So as I showed y'all with the math earlier, this is going to lower the amount you're going to pay in property taxes. This is going to be the biggest bang for your buck. It's a 5-page form, maybe it's a 4-page form. And it's something that's very simple. You turn it in. It's very important to know about and do. You do not get this by law. You have to ask for it. If you own the home and you live there, you're going to get it. It's designed to be streamlined. But again, you don't just get it immediately upon buying your home. if you think about it, all it does is deduct the value you can be taxed on, just like we showed with the math. Additionally, you have the benefit of capping the amount of value your home can increase year on year at 10%. So that gives you a lot more control over future tax bills, which makes it a lot easier to budget, especially when you're on a fixed income. If you are someone who is eligible for an over 65 person exemption, say you turn 65 this year in 2025, or maybe you're receiving Social Security disability benefits, or maybe disability insurance, you are eligible for the over 65 or disabled person exemption. Why do I bring those up in this term? First off, they're going to lower your taxable value even more, so you can stack it with your homestead exemption. Second, your school district taxes are the value is frozen. So if your appraised value, your tax value to the school district is $200,000 this year, you apply all the exemptions, it's 150, and you're 65, the school district tax value is never going to go above $150,000. That gives you a lot of control. Now you might be wondering, well, why is it just the school district taxes? Generally, that's 1/3 to 1/2 of most people's property tax bill. And so the law was written to give people that measure of control. Now, as I mentioned before, you can only have one homestead. You can't have a homestead in Harris County, a homestead in Fort Bend County, and what have you. You can only have one. You have to apply for it. It's not something that you get by law. Now, once you apply for it, if you live there, you're going to get it by law. A residence homestead can be a separate structure. Most people think of, traditional home on some land, doesn't share a wall with anybody, but it could be a condo where you live in a high rise, or maybe a 3 to 4 story building, and you own the box that looks like it's a part of an apartment, but you own that box. That's a homestead. It could be a manufactured home, something that was brought to your home on a semi truck and assembled there. It could be a trailer, something with wheels on it. It could be an RV on land that you own. That's your homestead. It can only be up to 20 acres if it's used for residential purposes. And again, just to emphasize, this is not automatic. You have to apply for it. Now, don't get scammed. It's free to apply for the homestead exemption. If you just go online and search Texas homestead exemption, you will find on the Texas Comptroller's website the form. If you go to your local appraisal district's website, Harris Central Appraisal District, HCAD, hcad.org, you will find the form. You can fill it out. It's free, and submit it. It's free. There are companies out there that will find that you've bought a house, and they'll mail you a letter saying, hey, pay us $25, pay us $50, $75. We'll file the homestead exemption for you. Don't do it. It's great that they're offering this service, but you don't need it. It's a very simple form to fill out. Very straightforward. The instructions are very easy to follow, and they're available in multiple languages. Now, how do I find the application form? Well, I got ahead of myself, but here we are on the Harris Central Appraisal District. This is for Harris County. If you were to look at their website, they have a section titled Form near the top of the screen. And you can see that the homestead exemption is one of the forms here. Now, we only listed a few of it. There's dozens of forms that they have here, but if you look for the residential exemption part of the, sorry about that, on the screen, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but I'm circling it right now. That is in Harris County. But if you just search for homestead exemption online, you will find this form in Texas on the Texas Comptroller's website. This is what the form looks like, at least in Harris County. The forms generally, it asks for the exact same information. It's just different CADs might put their stamp on it, like their seal. It's very easy to follow. It might look like, oh, there's a lot of words here, but I promise, take 5, 10, 15 minutes, you'll be able to figure it out and fill it out. This is a screenshot of the Texas Comptroller's website, where you can see that they have property tax forms, including at the bottom of this list, exemption forms. This, again, is showing you free government websites where these forms are available. Do not pay anybody to do it. It is a scam. This is a screenshot of what the form looks like from the comptroller. Ask for the exact same information, just does not have the CAD's stamp on it. They even have an instructions page. And what you see highlighted here is the number of this form. This is, again, the state of Texas form. It's form 50-114. Just go through the instructions and you'll be able to complete this form on your own. So what are more information about the homestead exemption. We've talked about the residence homestead exemption, the one that if you live in your home, you're going to qualify for. If you inherited your home, you can actually qualify for the exemption as well. I've touched on the elderly or over 65 person exemption and the disabled person exemption. There's also exemptions available for agricultural land, disabled veterans, surviving spouses of first responders, maybe killed in the line of duty. There are a lot of, very valuable homestead exemptions that can help you manage your property tax bill depending on your background. But if you own your home, you're going to qualify for the homestead exemption. Now, as part of the process, you're going to have to provide proof that you own your home. If you bought it, a mortgage company helped you buy it, they gave you the money they loaned you the money to buy it, you're going to have a deed. If you bought it through maybe seller financing, maybe you have something called a contract for deed or a land sale contract or an executory contract. That's proof that you bought the house. If you inherited the house, there's ways to qualify as well. Generally, you have to provide a death certificate of the prior owner, a utility bill for the property in your name, and your driver's license. And you'll have to sign an affidavit saying, I inherited this house. If you inherit the house, you might not have a deed. Now, if you've gone through the probate process, you probably have some documentation, but all of it is designed to make sure that you have some legal claim to the property so the appraisal district can grant your homestead exemption. You have to be an individual. A corporation cannot get a homestead exemption. It has to be where you live. And no matter how you apply for it, you have to provide a current photo ID. So the over 65 person exemption, you don't have to wait until your 65th birthday. You're eligible for it as of January 1, 2025. My dad's birthday is in March. He turned 65 4 years ago. I helped him apply for it in January 1. As we mentioned here, a few more details about the homestead. It does not have to be, your traditional home. It can be a condo, it can be a trailer. It can be up to 20 acres of land. You just have to prove that you're using it for residential use. If you're not the owner of the property, you might still qualify for an exemption in any one of these situations. Married couples, can qualify their property for homestead exemption if they treat it as community property. You both basically get 100%. It's not 200%. It's together you get 100%. If you inherited the property, as I mentioned, you're going to be considered an heir property owner. You can still get the homestead exemption. If you have a partial ownership and you're not married, you might get a proportionate amount of the homestead exemption. If you own 50% of the property, you'll get 50% of the homestead exemption as long as you live there. Now, when you're submitting your application for a homestead exemption, here's another deadline. You need to submit it by April 30th of the year you're applying. Now, what if you bought your house after April 30th? Well, there's exceptions to that now that when the law was changed 4 years ago, you will be eligible to secure the homestead exemption. Additionally, if maybe you missed it, maybe you inherited the property or you just didn't know you should apply for a homestead exemption, Texas law actually allows you to apply for up to 2 years late. I don't encourage you to do this because what you've done is you've already paid property taxes at full rate for 2 years, and now you're applying to get the exemptions applied retroactively. It can be great in getting you a little bit of a refund, but it could be painful over those 2 years. It's best to stay on top of these things and take them in the order that you get. Just understand that your normal deadline is April 30th, but you can apply for up to 2 years late. If your exemptions are granted for those late years, you may get a refund of the amounts or a reduction if you're past due on your property taxes. At the bottom of the slide, there's even a section of the homestead exemption that says, are you filing a late application? If you check yes, then you fill in the tax years, multiple, that you're applying for. Now, if you qualify, if maybe you're over 65, but you're also disabled, you only get to choose one of those exemptions. You don't get to choose both. The thing is, more often, the Texas law sets the floor at the exact same amount for both. So it's not like you're getting over one on one or the other. Additionally, both have the appraisal district school freeze. So that caps the school district taxes unless there's maybe a substantial improvement to the property. Both the over 65 and disabled person exemption qualify for an extra $10,000. So if this, as I mentioned before, the homestead exemption for school district taxes is $100,000. If you're over 65 or you're disabled, now you get another $10,000 off. You're basically deducting $110,000 from the appraised value to lower your taxable value, which is giving you further control and further lowering your property tax bill. Now, if there's a disaster, and let's be honest, Texas keeps getting hit by hurricanes. We had that derecho down here, and there's, you know, windstorms and firestorms all across the state. You may be eligible for a temporary property tax exemption called a disaster tax exemption. If your property has sustained at least 15% of the value damage that costs 15% of the value of the property to fix in a county that was part of a governor declared disaster area, you can apply for and receive a tax exemption to basically help you lower your property taxes while you recover from that disaster. It's a powerful tool. It has to be filed within 105 days of the disaster.
I need some information from you.
And so just to give you,
David
just
is
to give
wanting
you an
to
example,
file.
just to give you an example, last year when Hurricane Beryl hit the greater Houston area, I believe, don't quote me on this, but let's just say it hit the first week of July. I know it came right after the 4th of July. 105 days from that was early October. So that was the deadline to apply for this tax exemption. If your house was worth $200,000 and you had the roof ripped off by the hurricane or damaged or windows, and it was going to cost you more than 15%, in this case, the $200,000 house, $30,000 of repairs, go apply for that tax exemption. Get that temporary break on your property taxes so that you can apply that money to fixing up your house and recovering, surviving that disaster. Here's a picture of the temporary exemption property damage by disaster form. It's form 50-312. This is on the Texas Comptroller's website, and almost every county appraisal district has it on their website as well. Now, we're going to jump into heirs property right quick, where we're going to talk about the extra rights or rights that people who inherit their property in Texas have to be treated equally to people who bought their property. But I'm going to give you guys a 5-minute video here that does a better job explaining it so that you can hear from someone else besides myself. Go ahead and hitting play. Just to be clear, Lone Star Legal Aid doesn't own the rights to this video. It was prepared by the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas, but we received a grant from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas, and we partner with them to serve heirs property owners across our service area.
Heir property that had been in a family for 60, 70 years could be lost for a couple of $1,000s in back taxes. That could be devastating to a family.
This house was built in 1953. I think it was a subdivision where they were bringing in the people from the Army. It was all, what I said, reserve military people. My great uncle and my great aunt purchased this house in 1953. I inherited the place in 1990, I believe, when my aunt died, my great aunt died, and she left me the property. My brother was living in the home, so I was paying taxes on the home. And the taxes was still in Robert L. Boyd, which was my uncle, my great uncle. So when I tried to get the taxes, I wanted it in my name. Why they're not in my name? I inherited the place. Everything should be in my name. And that's when I found out that it was something to do with the succession.
Heirs property is property that has multiple owners. It's created typically in one of two ways: when a deceased person dies without a will and state law transfers ownership of their property to multiple heirs, or if a deceased person dies with a will and has left the property to multiple heirs. When you have multiple owners of a property, the property is generally at higher risk of foreclosure, forced sale, or tax sale.
I went down to the assessor's office and I started trying to do some of the legwork myself and found out that even they were confused. So I called legal aid and the process started.
In 2017, there was a law that passed that said the assessor's office had to remove the homestead exemptions from heir property until legitimate ownership is established. So we started to send out mailers to let them know that the homestead would be removed. And then after we partnered with Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, we were able to offer them a way to get the succession done at very little cost or no cost.
So a little over a year ago, we found out about a great new opportunity through the Federal Home Loan Bank to do heir property remediation work.
Through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas heir property program, Red River Bank was able to provide a $75,000 grant to the Southeast Legal Services organization to do remediation work for low-income families that were finding it difficult to clear titles.
We were very fortunate to be awarded a grant and have been able to help almost 100 homeowners at this point obtain title to their property and protect it.
I wanted to get rid of the property. I didn't feel that the property was worth the, the problems, the issue, the money. I really didn't feel, that it was worth it. But after everything was solved, and it was solved so easily, the home just had a different feel to it. It was like once the home was in my name, it was my property for real.
This is one of those issues that we can't just watch.
I'm able to get the loan now because everything is in my name properly.
This was one of those projects that went far beyond just the grant dollars.
Now we are definitely going to do 100% renovation on a home.
I would encourage financial institutions to take the opportunity to learn about Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas community investment programs, because there are so many resources there that we can help our community with.
I've had a contractor out, I've had the plumbers out, so everything is now falling into place. Everything is definitely falling into place now.
It's not just the individual impact for a particular family. It's what happens to neighborhoods when you have unstable forms of ownership, especially in areas like Southeast Louisiana, where hurricanes are more and more prevalent. So that is just another reason why we kind of feel a fire under us to get this work done, to better protect the people that we're here to serve.
So I wanted to share that video with you. I know they were talking about land in Louisiana, but the exact same thing happens in Texas. They might use words like secession. In Texas, we use tangled title, clear title. We're talking about land that people have inherited, family land, generational wealth. There's a whole lot of legal issues that pop up, but property taxes are probably one of the biggest ones. When someone dies without a will in Texas, or even if you die with a will but don't take it to court, Texas law decides who gets the property. Tangled title is when there's no paperwork that says who owns what. You heard the woman in the video talk about this was land that, or this was a house that her great uncle had prepared or had purchased, and that she inherited, 40 years later, but there was no paperwork. She worked with Legal Aid, Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, which is basically a sister organization of Lone Star Legal Aid just in Louisiana, to get the paperwork straightened out and get the property taxes straightened out, so that she was able to hold on to her house. Part of the reason for this presentation, not just on heirs property, was to empower people to be able to understand that property taxes always have to be paid. They're a vital part of funding important resources and services in our community. They're never going to go away, but knowledge is power. And if you've inherited your property, it's very important. I hope that video, helped educate. But it's very important to know that, you're not a second-class citizen just because you don't have paperwork putting the property in your name. There's tools and resources available. So in 2019, the Texas legislature changed the law to basically allow people who have inherited their property to get 100% of the tax exemptions in their name. Before, if you inherited the property and you live there, but you only inherited 25%, Well, you only got 25% of the tax exemption, which meant you paid significantly higher property taxes. That's not the case anymore. Again, there's a process to prove that you're an heir property owner, to prove that you live in the property, and to apply for and secure a homestead exemption. This is something that Lone Star Legal Aid helps a lot of our clients with as part of our title clearing, tangled title work. We help heir property owners in Harris County, Fort Bend County, Montgomery County, Galveston County, Brazoria County, San Jacinto County, and Liberty County right now. We hope to expand this project, but we take a holistic, people-centered approach, right? We want to get the property in your name. We want to make sure we're helping your taxes be fair and make sure you understand what your rights are. With this new law, as I mentioned before, an heir only has to provide a signed affidavit saying, I swear under penalty of perjury, I inherited this property. And they also have to provide the death certificate of the prior owner to prove that link, right? You're not going to be able to get the death certificate unless you're family. Third, you're going to have to provide a utility bill proving that you live there. And finally, you'll have to provide an ID, which is required for all tax exemptions. If you look on our next slide, there's actually a section of the homestead exemption application. Again, remember it's form 50-114 that asks, is the property heir's property? This is highlighted, check yes or no. Now, if you are maybe you inherited this property with 3 or 4 other brothers and sisters, or if you're the only one who lives there, you check no under do other heir property owners occupy the property. But if there's multiple heirs, maybe your brothers and sisters or a cousin or somebody who inherited with you lives there, you can check yes, and there's other affidavits that have to be signed. These are all standardized forms that can be taken to a bank, to find a notary or a local notary service to help you get completed. Now, heir's property in Texas requires these primary documents. So there's the application, the homestead exemption, that's form 50-114. Then there's the affidavit where you swear I inherited this property. Guess what? That's form 50-114A, A for affidavit. Then you need the death certificate and you need the most recent utility bill for the property. If there's a property tax lawsuit, somebody like the school district or the county has sued to collect property taxes, you're going to be court papers that are probably going to identify, you're going to want to provide those as well. And if there's other heirs that live in the property, they can also complete form 50-114A. There's a different section for people who are not the person applying for the exemptions, but also live in the property. It's a very streamlined form to make this as easy as possible for people to prove the right to the homestead exemption. So this is form 50-114A. You can see that it starts with an affidavit that says this is affidavits for owners or applicants who are age 65 or older and ownership interest is not of record. It's a fancy way of saying you ain't got a deed. You have not gone to probate court. You're just swearing under penalty of perjury that I'm 65 or older and I inherited this property. Now, if you're not 65, we go to the next part. Affidavit for an applicant claiming an ownership interest in property, including heir property. And here is where you swear under penalty of perjury, sign in front of a notary, that you inherited the property. This is, again, standardized on that form. Heir property tax exemptions do not transfer title. What does that mean? It means you filling out this form and getting the homestead exemptions applied to the property taxes does not put the property in your name. There's a whole title transfer process that either requires going to probate court or working with a lawyer to prepare certain documents to get that. That's called getting record title, the paperwork that says I own it, right? Or marketable title. That's outside the scope of today's presentation, but it is something that Lone Star Legal Aid, myself, my colleague Samantha, we help people with every day. So we've gone through a variety of different exemptions. We just ended on our heirs property exemption section. What happens if my application for an exemption or a tax deferral, which is a term we haven't talked about yet, was denied? You can protest. Basically, if the CAD does a thing that you disagree with, you can file what's called a notice of protest saying I disagree and here's why. So if your exemption or deferral was not granted, you should get a letter giving you 30 days to protest, or actually giving you 30 days to provide more information. After that, if it's still officially denied, you're going to get a letter saying here's why, and you'll have the ability to protest. In fact, the letter will say you have the ability to protest. This protest is also handled by the Appraisal Review Board, the friends that we talked about earlier. Common reasons for exemptions to be denied. Maybe you forgot to give them a copy of your ID, or maybe your ID was expired, or maybe you didn't, if you're applying for, the over 65 person exemption or the disability exemption, you didn't provide proof that you're disabled, or you didn't provide proof that you're over 65, which is generally going to be on your ID. Or maybe you didn't provide proof that you actually own the house or that you're, inherited the property. Those are common. There's ways to overcome those things. Lone Star Legal Aid helps our clients all the time, but there's ways, you don't need a lawyer to solve most of these problems to be able to prove your eligibility for the homestead exemption. If for some reason you protest and the ARB still rules in favor of the CAD, you have the right to appeal to the district court, just like we talked about, filing a lawsuit, or go to the State Office of Administrative Hearings through arbitration. Again, at this point, you should definitely talk to a lawyer to help you with these situations. Now, okay, I've got my exemptions, the property's in my name, I've gotten the taxes as low as I can. What if I can't afford them? What if I'm past due? What if I inherited this property and there's a lot of taxes owed on it? I don't have the money. I don't have $10,000 to pay it all off right now. But you might qualify for a payment plan. So there's generally two types of payment plans. If you're over 65 or you're disabled, you can pay your property taxes in quarterly installments. And when I say quarterly, I'm not talking about quarters of the year. These installments generally have to be made in just 4 equal installments throughout the year. Different different tax offices set different rules, but generally you have to make your first installment by February 1st. More often than not, you have to make your last payment by July, but some counties may be, provide you a little bit longer time every year to pay your property taxes. The advantage of doing this when you're over 65 or disabled is you avoid those penalties that I mentioned. So again, your tax bill being due by January 31st, February 1, you don't pay, there's automatic 6% penalty. Well, if you request the payment plan in advance and make your first payment on February 1st, there's no penalty. And 6% on a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 property tax bill can add up. This is a way to avoid those penalties and take control of your property taxes while also, keeping your managing your budget. So on this slide, we talk about the other dates that installments are due. So I mentioned earlier, the first payment's due by February 1st, 2 months later. The next payment's due on April 1st, 2 months later. The third payment's due on June 1st, and the fourth payment is due on August 1st. I mentioned July. I knew I was in the ballpark. It's been a while since I looked at this area of the law. The key is don't assume you're going to get it. You have to contact the tax office. Now, Texas law says they have to work with you depending on if you're in certain demographics. If you're over 65 or you're receiving a disabled person exemption, they have to offer you this, but you have to ask. No one's going to give it to you unless you ask. Excuse me. Sometimes if your home's in a disaster area, you may be qualified to pay taxes in equal installments as well. You have to ask. There are other property tax payment options as well. Again, you have to ask. You have to see if they'll offer you this option. Tax offices can offer other options, but it is really to their discretion. What we've listed on these last 2 slides or last 3 slides has been what's required under Texas law. Now, if you're behind on property taxes or you inherited property that's already behind on property taxes, you can qualify for a 1 to 3 year or 12 to 36 month payment plan with the tax office to get current. You'll have to set this up with each tax office that sends you a bill. So let me explain what that means because it might not make sense. If you live in Harris County inside Beltway 8, generally you're going to have one tax bill. That tax bill is going to come from the Harris County tax office. It's going to be for the city of Houston, Harris County, HISD. But if you live in an area that has a school district that collects its own property taxes, you're probably going to get a tax bill from the tax office, the Harris County tax office, and you're going to get a tax bill from Spring Branch ISD or Spring ISD. depending on what part of town you live in. Those are examples. You could be A-Leaf on the southwest side or Aldine on the north side. Those are ones that just pop up. So you're going to have 2 tax bills. Why is that important? If you have multiple tax bills, you got to contact multiple tax offices to set up the payment plans. If you set up a payment plan with one but not with the other, you could be facing significant penalties and interest without even knowing it. It's a lot to handle. That's why we do these educational presentations every 3 months, and that's why they're recorded. If you're here live or if you're watching this on recording, you know somebody who can benefit from it, please, please, please share or encourage them to show up. Our next property tax presentation will be in May. Now, here is a screenshot of the tax office late last year. We have to update this because the Harris County tax assessor collector has changed. The elected tax assessor has changed, but the website has not. You can request a payment plan online. It's very easy and straightforward. The tax office does a great job helping people. The Harris County tax office does a great job helping people access this right under Texas law. Now, if you use a payment plan that does not charge fees or penalties, your mortgage company has to honor it. But let me take a step back. More often than not, if you have a mortgage on your property, a portion of your mortgage is what's called escrowed. That means some of your monthly payment goes to taxes and some of it goes to insurance. More often than not, your mortgage company going to keep you current on your property taxes. If for some reason you're one of those 10% of the population who has a mortgage that's not escrowed and you're over 65, you can set up a payment plan where you pay your taxes in installments. That's what we talked about a few slides ago, and not have to pay any penalties. That will blow your mortgage company's mind because they're probably not from Texas. They will try to pay your property taxes and then tell you to pay them back. We help a lot of homeowners unwind these situations where it's basically there's 3 people, there's the tax office, there's you and your mortgage company, and ain't nobody talking. We help a lot of people navigate those, but knowledge is power. Understand that if you set up a payment plan with the tax office, you should take control. Don't assume anybody's talking to your mortgage company, and you should let your mortgage company know, I have this payment plan. It's this right under Texas law. Do not pay my property taxes because I'm taking control of it. Do it in writing. A phone call generally will get recorded, but if you do it in writing, you're going to have a lot more protection for you and to make sure the mortgage company knows and can't say they didn't know. Now, I mentioned a term a few slides ago called tax deferrals. A tax deferral only allows you to put off the deadline to pay your property taxes. It does not mean you don't have to pay your property taxes. I talked to a lot of clients throughout, the greater Houston area, East Texas, where they say, oh, I'm exempt from paying taxes, or I get to defer it. And so that they think that means you don't have a tax bill. You don't ever have to pay. More often than not, they're wrong. The tax deferral, as the term defer means, is just put it off, right? You don't got to pay now, but I encourage all of my clients who get a tax deferral, which I'll explain in detail, to pay what you can when you can, if your budget allows for it. So you can only get a tax deferral if you're over age 65. And this one actually is tied to your 65th birthday, or you're disabled. And just generally as Texas law looks to are you receiving disability benefits from the Social Security Administration? So has a doctor medically pronounced you unable to work for 12 months or more? You have to apply for a tax deferral. There's a separate form. It's form 50-126. You can find it at the link here on the Texas Comptroller's website. You just go to Google, type in Texas tax deferral, you'll find it. Don't pay anybody to fill out one of these for you. Again, avoid the scams. The major benefit for a tax deferral is if your house is paid off. If you don't have a mortgage on your property, you can do a tax deferral if you can't afford your property taxes. The benefit there is also if you fall behind on taxes, you're not able to pay, keep them current. It caps the interest rate on past due taxes at 5%. The interest rate can go all the way up to 18% if you don't pay your taxes and many months or years go by. But that interest rate is capped at 5%, making it much easier for you to get current or stay current on your property taxes. Long story short, what does a property tax deferral do? It gives you more control. If your house is paid off, you don't have a mortgage on it, it gives you more control over how much of your budget goes to pay property taxes. Pay what you can, when you can, if you can. Here's a copy of the form. Here's a picture of it. It's an affidavit. This is where you sign in front of a notary saying, I swear under penalty of perjury, I am over age 65 or I am disabled, unable to work for 12 months or more. And you complete this form and then you mail it in or bring it into your local county appraisal district. As I mentioned before, it doesn't get rid of the taxes. It doesn't. Nothing gets rid of the property taxes. You can get the bill as low as possible. I've had clients get their bill lowered to zero. I'll explain in just a minute, but a tax deferral does not get your bill to zero. If you don't pay your taxes, you have a tax deferral. If you sell your house or you pass away, the taxes will come due within 6 months. If you sell your house, the buyer is going to require the taxes to be paid, before they take it because they want to buy a house, not a headache. I just mentioned how you could get your tax bill to zero. That's if you have keep protesting the value of your house down. The tax appraised value is like $100,000. The homestead exemption is $100,000. The homestead exemption lowers the appraised value to zero. A tax rate of 2% times zero equals a $0 tax bill. It's rare, but it's possible for some homes that might be older or in need of repair, or for people who are over age 65 or disabled, where they get those more generous exemptions to stack with their homestead exemption. Again, it's not common, and understand that a tax deferral does not get you a $0 tax bill. The powerful feature, another powerful feature of a tax deferral is it can stop a tax foreclosure sale or tax collection lawsuit. So here we are. I said 30 minutes. I've been talking for an hour. I just said the words property tax foreclosure for the first time since we got started. Let's go into a little bit deeper dive on what property tax foreclosure looks like. Can I be foreclosed on for not paying my property taxes? Yep. Yes, you can. Like I mentioned a few slides ago, property taxes do not go anywhere. You might pay off your mortgage. You might live in an area of town where you don't have to keep it, maybe you're far away from the coast. You don't want to keep insurance on your house, so you can stop paying things, but the property taxes are going to be there every single year. If you don't pay them, you can lose your home to be foreclosed on to pay those property taxes. So just foreclosures in general, Texas is referred to as a non-judicial foreclosure state. That means if you have a mortgage, like the mortgage you use to buy your house, they can foreclose upon and sell your house without taking you to court. That's a non-judicial, not going to court. Looks like. However, for property taxes, that's money owed to different parts of the government. Again, school district, county, city, others. In order for them to foreclose, they got to take you to court. So you're not going to be surprised. This is going to be a process. There's going to be a lawsuit. The taxing units will have to get you served. If you've inherited the property, there's going to be a lot of paperwork to help you get caught up. And there's lots of public records to make sure you're able to stay on top of things. After the lawsuit's filed, if the taxing units win their lawsuit, they'll get what's called a judgment. A judgment basically means a judge has agreed with them and here's the number. To enforce that judgment, the taxing units can ask for an order of sale. That's just a court order saying now the house can be sold. The court order is given to a local sheriff or constable who will then mail a letter to the property owner and to the property itself, to the address, saying the house is going to be sold 21 days from now on the first Tuesday of the month. Now, this is the second bullet point. In Texas, there can only be 12 foreclosure sales in every year because foreclosures can only happen on the first Tuesday of every month. Now, here we are on February 27th. The first Tuesday of March will be our next foreclosure sale. That is March the 4th. That's next Tuesday. Foreclosures for property taxes, for HOAs, for mortgages, all occur on the same day. If anybody ever tells you about a date that they're going to foreclose on your house and it's not the first Tuesday of the month, they're probably misinformed or scamming you. Now, I want to take a step back and work through this process. If you're behind on property taxes, the county taxing units will generally send you a couple of letters saying, hey, this is what the bill is, please pay. Then they'll file a lawsuit. As part of that, you'll get served with the lawsuit. Here's a copy of the papers from a constable. Then there'll be a court date. So you'll get notice of that court date. This is the fourth opportunity to do something. And then finally, there'll be a judgment. But once there's a judgment, that is when you really need to start worrying about the house is going to be eventually sold. After the judgment, now we're on 5, there's notice of the foreclosure sale. This is the notice, if you're looking at the first bullet point on this slide, that has to be mailed out 21 days in advance. And that foreclosure sale date will be the first Tuesday of the month. So you got 6, arguably 7 opportunities to solve this problem. We often at Lone Star Legal Aid interject ourselves whenever the lawsuit's been filed. Most common, our clients inherit property from an elderly family member who maybe had a tax deferral. They've passed away. Now there's no tax deferral, but there's a lot of property taxes. Someone inherits it, doesn't know what to do. Maybe they're 65, maybe they're disabled. Maybe we help them set up a payment plan, but we stop the property tax collection. Can't say we can do it for everybody, but we evaluate everyone eligible for our services to see what we can do and advise them, and maybe even get involved in the court process to help them hold on to their home. Because the property tax foreclosure process gives you many touch points, like I just went through 7, to do something to be able to hold onto your home. So delinquent tax accounts, meaning you haven't paid, can be turned over as early as July 1st of each year. So I mentioned earlier, the bill is due by January 31st. It's delinquent as of February 1st. Then you got February, March, April, May, June, July, 6 months before it can be turned over. Candidly, in my experience, I've never seen a local member of local government, so like the school district and county, sue for less than 2 years of delinquency. That doesn't mean they can't. I just haven't seen it. As the second bullet point points out, the tax office will try informal collection, meaning they'll send you some letters before they file the lawsuit. They're going to have to hire lawyers to file the lawsuit. Different counties do different things. Some counties will hire a private law firm. Some counties will use the county attorney's office. They will serve you with a copy of the paperwork. That's called a petition. This paperwork will say, you were past due on these many years. You have this many days to respond to this lawsuit. The most common way of getting served or service of the lawsuit is for a constable or sheriff to hand it to you. If you're not home and they try to reach you 2 or 3 times, they will mail it to you. That's called alternative service. They might even staple it or tape it to your front door. That's another form of alternative service. There's no way to stop a lawsuit by avoiding it. You can just kind of delay things. If you owe property taxes to the school district, but you're current to the city and the county, school district is going to serve the other members, the city and the county, so that everybody's brought in. Sometimes these different taxing units will intervene. So you might feel like you're getting piled on. That generally only happens when you live in a part of the county that has multiple tax offices. Again, going back to my example, if you live in the suburban area of Houston, you might have up to 3 property tax bills. I had a client with 5 property tax bills. He had a levy improvement district, a municipal utility district, a bill from the county, a bill from the school district, and a 5th property tax bill that I cannot remember. That was rare. Most common is 1 to 2 property tax bills. But each one of those tax collectors can jump into the lawsuit to make sure they're getting paid if you're past due on your property taxes. If the owner has died and there's been no probate, what will happen is the court will appoint a lawyer to look for the heirs who inherited. This is called an attorney ad litem. This is not the heir's lawyer. It's just the lawyer that's appointed to make sure that the heirs are given notice of the lawsuit. If the ad litem attorney can find them, then the heirs get brought into the lawsuit and they have to represent themselves or hire a lawyer. Generally, ad litems will come to the property, they'll knock on the door, they'll mail some letters, they'll make some phone calls. The best ad litems I've worked with have talked to the neighbors to figure out where the heirs are. They're really trying to do the best they can to find the heirs. But again, it's just to notify the heirs, hey, this lawsuit exists, like give you another opportunity to save the family land or the property you may be living in. If you're sued in any situation, you got to file a response or what's called an answer to the lawsuit. What we've included on this slide is a link, and I know this is a presentation that's recorded, so the link ain't going to work, but this is a link to what's called an answer form. If you go to www.texaslawhelp.org, the website pops up. There's a search bar, just like Google. Type in answer, you'll get to this link. And texaslawhelp.org is a website that's maintained by legal aid attorneys across the state, along with the Texas Legal Services Corps. I can't remember, PLSC. And so it's regularly updated. You can trust that the legal information and forms there are they're not randomly put there. This is trusted, vetted forms from lawyers. Here's a picture of what the form looks like. Defendant's answer. You're going to want to get this filed as soon as possible after you're served. But Texas law says the day that you're served, you have to file it by the Monday that comes 20 days after the date you were served. So if you get served on a Saturday, count forward 20 days. If that day is Monday, that's your deadline. If that day is Tuesday, the next Monday is your deadline. But more often than not, it's about 2.5 to 3 weeks after you got served. It's always, your answer is always due on a Monday. So you've been served, you filed your answer. The next thing you're going to get is a notice of trial. So depending on where you are in Texas, your trial may be in person. That's more often. Sometimes trials are done by Zoom or online. You'll get this notice in the mail saying, here's how to join. Excuse me. All court papers are online. Well, depending on what county you're in, most of the time the court papers are online. If not, you can contact the clerk's office who maintains the paperwork and ask for how you can find those papers. You sometimes have to go down to the courthouse to get them. Maybe they have a website and you just haven't been able to find it yet. But getting the court papers to understand where things are in the process is important so you can know how to solve it. When you go to trial, the legal issue is going to be, do you own this property? How much is the property taxes? Have you paid? If you do own the property and the county proves that you owe property taxes and that you haven't been paid, they're going to get a judgment. But that's not the end of the world. As I mentioned before, you're going to have multiple opportunities to set up a payment plan, maybe apply for a tax deferral, do something to get the taxes paid before your house will be sold. It's often a good idea to go to the tax court because you can negotiate for a payment plan. The tax attorneys may even reach out to you to see if they can negotiate a payment plan because no one wants to take your house. They just need the property taxes to be paid. Again, to pay our school teachers, police officers, firefighters, and repair the roads. I've touched on all of these points already. This is what to expect at trial. It's important to wait your opportunity. The judge will call you, give you the opportunity to say your side, explain your side of the case, and then let you know if they're going to grant a judgment in favor of the tax office or not. Don't ignore court papers. Make sure you file your answer on time. If there's multiple tax offices, it can be very confusing. You're going to want to make sure you get everything resolved with all of the tax offices. If you need more time, if trial gets set and it's maybe set on a day that you're going to be out of town or loved ones in the hospital, contact the court, file some paperwork saying, hey, can we reschedule this? Here's a good reason. If you go to tax court and you lose, certain counties have special tax courts called tax court. You can appeal to the district court. If you're in a county that doesn't have a tax court and you're just in district court, you do have the right to appeal. It's just a very complicated process. It's outside the scope of this presentation. And I promise we're winding down. We only got 6 more slides, but if you are living in the property and you qualify for a tax deferral, you can apply, you can submit that to the tax court and say, and this would do what's called abate or pause the tax lawsuit. It basically says you can't keep collecting these taxes. Most judges will dismiss the lawsuit, meaning it goes away, so long as you're eligible for tax deferral. Some judges will just keep the lawsuit alive, but inactive, meaning there's no court hearings. You don't have to come back to court so long as you live in the property. So let's say you go through the property tax collection process, the lawsuit's filed, a judgment is granted, and a foreclosure sale gets scheduled. Your mail notice, hey, the sale is going to happen on March 4th, but you're eligible for a tax deferral. Apply for the tax deferral, send it to the county appraisal district, send a copy of it to the lawyers, send a copy of it to the sheriff who's in charge of doing this, the foreclosure sale. All of this is going to be in the court papers. More often than not, you can find this online. Even if you don't know where to start, call the tax office and say, I'm eligible for a tax deferral. They'll work with you. And what this can do is get the foreclosure sale canceled. We've done this for many, many of our clients. If they're eligible for a tax deferral and they contact us in advance, we can keep that house in the family. Now, let's say maybe you're not eligible for a tax deferral or the house has already been sold. Under Texas law, you have the right to buy it back. It's called redemption or redeem. You have the right to do this for up to 2 years. Now, it's not free. If your house was sold for $30,000, in year one, you're going to have to pay back the $30,000 plus 25%. In year two, same example, house is sold for $30,000. You're going to have to pay $30,000 plus 50%. It can get very expensive, especially if you were someone who couldn't afford the property taxes before. You have to pay the buyer. If you're not able to locate the buyer, or maybe they're ignoring you, you can pay this money to the tax office. They'll give you a piece of paper, and that's basically your deed showing that you got the property back. If for some reason, your house is sold, or maybe some land that you inherited was sold, and you're not able to pay the property taxes, the house was sold for more than the taxes were due. So $10,000 are due in taxes. The house sells for $50,000. There's a $40,000 difference. You as the property owner are entitled to that. That's what's called excess proceeds. Now they're not the court is not going to just give you this money. You have to file paperwork with them called a petition, asking for the excess proceeds, and you have to prove, hey, I'm the property owner, or I inherited. I'm entitled to some of or all of this money. It's a process, but it's a process Lone Star Legal Aid can help you navigate. Other law firms or lawyers can help you navigate. Again, if you're going into the court system, I highly recommend you get a trusted advisor like a lawyer to help you navigate this process. But, one silver lining to the dark cloud of the foreclosure sale could be you get the money from the sale to restart your life, find another alternative housing elsewhere. Here is a picture of a sample petition and order a sample petition and order are available on the Taxmaster Judge's website. If you were to go to justtex.net and look for the Taxmaster's website, you will be able to find this order. Most tax court judges, most district court judges want some proof that you are who you say you are, not just some random person filing paperwork off the street. You'll have to file an affidavit. You'll probably have to come to court to prove, again, you're just not some random person trying to claim money that you maybe not are entitled to. Now, avoid foreclosure scams. When the foreclosure process starts, whether it's for a mortgage, HOAs, or property taxes, this is all public record. Notices are, for mortgage foreclosures are made part of the clerk's public records. Lawsuits are part of the court's public records. Scammers are going to find that. Scammers are going to contact you. I want to emphasize that not all that glitters is gold. All right. If someone contacts you and says, I can make this problem go away, your problem is their opportunity. I highly encourage you to read the fine print. If you don't understand, don't sign anything, because you're probably signing your house away. Talk to a lawyer, get the paperwork. Don't agree to anything. Say you'll get back to them. The Federal Trade Commission has an article about foreclosure scams. You can find it at consumer.ftc.gov/articles/mortgage-relief-scams. Texas Law Help, that website that I mentioned earlier, also has an article about foreclosure scams. Again, if you go to Texas Law Help and type in their little search bar, foreclosure scams, you will find this article. Empower yourself with this. Again, if it seems too good to be true, trust your instincts. It definitely is. So, Samantha and I have been speaking for about an hour and 45 minutes. Happy to take any questions, either if they were shared on social media or posted in the chat. I will pause and drink a little more water now. Thank you.
There aren't any in the chat. The ones that were asked prior to it was addressed already. The links that you made reference to, there was one like a couple of slides just before this one about the petition for the excess proceeds.
Yeah, we can jump back
happen
to that.
Have that link. Could you drop that one into the chat as well, so that way I can make sure. Okay, so that way I can make sure it gets emailed to the participants, in addition to all of these other links and resources that you referenced.
Absolutely. So I'm glad our presentation is comprehensive, and I'm glad the topics that we've gone over answered the questions that we got on social media. That's awesome.
Was was that one the sample petition?
Yes, ma'am.
What slide is that?
This is
Never
slide
mind, I got it.
1-1. Okay.
Okay, so I did have a question for reference, for actually two. One of the slides you mentioned that if someone has a mortgage and their taxes and insurance are not being escrowed, if they enter into an agreement for payment arrangement, the mortgage company, if you request it, cannot force payment at that point, that they have to honor the payment arrangement?
Correct. And I want to make, I'm glad you asked this question because there's a little nuance here. You have to set up this payment plan to avoid being declared delinquent. So January 31st is the last day to pay your tax bill or set up a payment plan and not be delinquent. This type of payment plan is generally only available for people who are disabled or who are 65 years or older. There's very limited exceptions to that rule. It only applies if there's a disaster. But if someone who's disabled or over 65 sets up a payment plan and is honoring that payment plan, he or she needs to make sure their mortgage company knows about the terms of the payment plan, so the mortgage company doesn't then turn around and pay the property taxes. Because what happens is most mortgage companies hire third-party contractors. These third-party contractors like just go and get information like from the tax office in mass. They'll find your tax bill and the mortgage company will just pay it. And once they pay it, they'll add that tax bill to your mortgage and say, we paid your $6,000 property tax bill. Please pay us back the $6,000. And they're not trying to set up any payment plans with you. And that can create a huge, huge headache for homeowners. Now,
plus they want to make sure you don't get delinquent again. So they're going to want to collect in advance on top of that.
Right. In those situations, the mortgage company will say, now that you're delinquent on your taxes, we're going to set up an escrow account. And now your mortgage payment's going to jump. This can create a huge headache for homeowners. It's very incumbent. I'm going to say something that's disappointing, but it's all on you. It's your house. You contact the tax office. And then when you get the payment plan, you contact your mortgage company and do everything in writing to really have control and make sure that there's the communication is clear.
Okay. Now, question there in regards to that. I thought you couldn't file the request for a tax deferral or for payment arrangement until it becomes delinquent. Like you have to wait until after the 31st in order to do it.
So I talked about two different types of payment plans. There is the one available for the people who are 65 years old or disabled. You can apply for that prior to the delinquency. Okay. In fact, if you're going to utilize everything we just talked about, you need to do it prior to the delinquency date. The other option, that the 1 to 3 year or 12 to 36 month option, is available if you already have become delinquent. And in that situation, that typically pops up where you don't have a mortgage on your property, because a mortgage company is never going to let you get delinquent on your property taxes, because they will pay your taxes for you. The reason being is property taxes have what's called a super priority lien, meaning if you don't pay them and they foreclose, it wipes out the mortgage. Mortgage companies don't ever want to feel like they're in second place. They always want to be in first place to get paid. So that's why they're always going to go out of their way to get information on your tax status and pay your property taxes.
So for those people that potentially maybe they refinance or something, they've already got more than 20% equity in their house, when they're not going to be required to do an escrow. So what happens in that instance where the mortgage company is not getting the tax bill because it's not being escrowed?
Yeah. So in that situation, you're going. What will more often than not happen is it's again all on you because it's your property. You're going to want to stay current on your property taxes. The mortgage company is probably not going to find out about it until the county or the school district starts the collection process. And I don't know if there's a law that requires this, but most taxing units will mail a notice of your property tax bill to the mortgage company with or without your permission. They can pull this information from the public records. And and then your mortgage company knows about it, they're going to solve the problem. They're going to pay the taxes, but then that's going to jack up your mortgage payment.
Last question that I had here. And why did I just go blank? Oh my goodness. I went and clicked that link that Sam just put in there, and it just completely wiped out my question without my thought process. Oh, assuming somebody from beginning to end, property taxes are due, they're delinquent, it's July or what have you, or however soon that the county can then file the suit. From the time they actually file, how long is that process for foreclosure? Assuming I don't answer, I don't contact them, I don't make a payment arrangement, how long is that period?
The quickest that could possibly be would probably be right around 4 months. So that's, you're delinquent February 1st, 6 months later, it's July 1st, the bill gets turned over to the tax office's attorneys. They turn around on July 2nd, file the lawsuit. You get served on July 3rd. On the day that you get served, add 20 days, and then that 20th day is a Monday. That's your answer deadline. On day 21, in theory, the tax office could file a request with the court to say, hey, give us a judgment. They didn't file any response. Let's say on day 22, the judge is like, yep, rubber stamps it. This never happens, by the way. Judges are busy. They have hundreds of cases. Like, it never happens this quickly. So now you're, basically in late July. The judge signs the judgment. The tax office in early August asked for an order of sale to enforce their judgment. The judge turns around the day after, gives them the order of sale. Again, this never happens. And then the tax office gives the order of sale to the sheriff the next day. Again, now we're mid-July. And the sheriff then has to look forward to find the next first Tuesday that it can mail out the notice, and it be the notice 21 days in advance. Well, if we're in mid-August, you're already past the deadline, the 21 days in advance of the first Tuesday in September. So you're probably looking at your house being sold in October. Now, I mentioned 4 months. I mean, that's all of July, all of August, all of September, and like basically a week into October. So 3.5 to 4 months, but I've never seen it move that fast.
So roughly close to 9.5, 10 months from the time you become delinquent that you can. So say, for instance, I hit the lottery the last week in September. Is it then too late for me to go in and just make one lump sum payment, or or somebody's out of the country, worst case scenario, whatever? I didn't know that the bill had been paid, or I didn't know. Can they then at that point make a payment arrangement or talk to somebody or stop it in any way possible?
Yeah, there's nothing to stop you, right? You can definitely, if you have the money before the house is sold, before a deed is, signed by the sheriff, you can, pay off the property taxes and save your house. There's practical considerations, right? You got to, hopefully, you're not calling it 4:59 the Monday before your house is going to be sold, and no one at the tax office is picking up. Or the money needs to be in your hand, right? You don't need to have cash. It doesn't need to be in a bank account that has to be wired. There's those practical considerations. But like, if you have the cash in your hand, like a giant money bag, you go down to the tax office, you pay off the bill, they're going to stop the foreclosure sale because they're not going to have any reason to foreclose.
But believe it or not, in the real estate world, I've been a licensed realtor for over 10 years. My very first sale that I had, it ended up being a situation where a couple didn't tell their realtor that their house, that they were getting a divorce, and that the wife had not paid the mortgage in months. Didn't know that the house was due to go to, we were supposed to close that Monday. The house was supposed to go on the foreclosure sale that Tuesday.
Oh my gosh.
So literally, luckily, we had a great title company person that had a courier on standby that was at the bank waiting to get the cashier's check from the sale to get down there to the courthouse before 9 o'clock in order to stop that sale the morning of that it was due to go on auction.
You can't make this up.
It was a mess. It was a mess. And I was so done at that point. It was like, I don't even want to be a realtor no more. I just want to be done with this. This is so
That was your first one.
that was my very first one. And it took forever for those people to finally decide on this house. And like, if this is the best y'all want me to. So I got all of my experience doing everything with that one sale instantly. But at any rate, it happens. It happens. And meaning that people just don't talk. They don't communicate. Um, and I guarantee everybody that's probably listening, they know somebody that's in foreclosure, but they don't know who specifically that it is. Somebody is going through this scenario or through a foreclosure situation right now, and they're just not telling anybody. They just
There's
know.
There's a shame that's associated with it, but staying
Yeah.
silent can really put you, time is so valuable. Empower
Yeah.
yourself with this information and reach out for help.
Indeed. Do not, if you don't ask, you don't receive. So if you need some help, the goal is to try to save your home. Definitely reach out to somebody. You never know if your coworker or whoever, somebody may have been watching this video and you just so happen to be the person that needs it. So definitely in casual passing conversation, I encourage people to kind of talk about some of these things so that people know there are options that are out there. There's stuff that's available to them that they can take advantage of, and which is why we do these presentations. So we want to try to get as much information out to the community as we possibly can. So, and we can only do so much. We can only do so many videos every month and kind of leave the information out there. But we do want to make sure that that we do get the most up-to-date information, which is why we do these so frequently. Processes change, laws change, a disaster may happen which can impact and kind of change everything, where another exemption comes up or another deadline is approaching or something could that affect, that people just don't know about. So thank y'all very much. Really appreciate the update and everything that you guys provided for us today. If there's any information that you all would like to go back to review or to repeat, I will be sending out a link of this recording. You can also join or subscribe to the Amos Houston YouTube channel and see this recording that will be put on there or uploaded there as well. Actually, it's there live, so it'll automatically be there. In addition to that, I will be emailing out the links of all of the different resources that Samantha put into the chat that Amir had referred to. So if you guys do have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to myself or directly to Lone Star Legal Aid, or I'll be happy to forward any kind of questions that you guys may have. So, but definitely apply if you all are interested or have the need for any other civil legal assistance, that there is help that's out there and it is available to you. So thank y'all very much. We appreciate you. I know your vocals should be tired as I don't know what right about now.
Yeah, I ain't
So
talking for the rest of the day.
Oh, you want to bet?
All
Because
right.
I have to stop a case with you.
All right. You all have a wonderful remainder of your afternoon. You all take care of yourselves, stay safe, and we will see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again. Take care, Nia.
All right. Oh, well, wait, real quick. Next month we are mortgage foreclosure, which is the 27th of March.
It's all,
Yes,
yeah,
it
the
is.
27th of March, same bat time, same bat channel, but this time it's going to be Lauren Masulo Martin and myself.
Okay. And then on Tuesday next week, we do have Sherry with Credit Coalition, who will be doing the presentation on reverse mortgages again. So that'll kind of like the precursor moving into that one. So if you guys need any information about reverse mortgages, then that presentation is going to be done on Tuesday as well. So
Sherry's good people. You're going to learn a lot.
Indeed. All right. Y'all have a good one. Talk to you later.
Bye.